Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome to another episode of the اركب Thoughts podcast. In today's episode, myself and Kasim, we're going to be talking about social media, its benefits, its negatives, what are our thoughts about it, and some advices that we implement and that we use to inshallah help in your journey of navigating the world of social media, shall we say. But before we get started, inshallah, as always, please do hit the like button, do subscribe to keep up with our content, and share with your friends and family if you find what we talk about and what we discuss beneficial, inshallah. So, Kasim, let's get started. I want to start this conversation today first about a concept or like a word that I'm going to define as going rogue, right? And what I mean by going rogue is living your life without using internet, without using social media, um, without potentially using a smartphone, maybe as three separate things, and we can talk about each of them in turn. What are your thoughts about it? Okay. I mean, the way that I see it is living your life without internet in this day and age. I just don't think that's possible. Okay. Living your life without social media, I think that's debatable. It's possible, I reckon. So I think that's a more interesting conversation. And living a life without a smartphone, again, I think is possible. I know some people that do that, where they basically they don't have a smartphone. They just have one of them old sort of Nokia brick style phones or something. And that's the way that they live their life. What are your thoughts about that?
About all three, or
Take it in turn if you like. Let's start with living your life without internet. I think that's the easy one. Do you reckon it's possible?
it just depends what you mean without internet. Are we talking about complete no internet, nowhere in your life? You don't use it even for emails, work emails, anything like that? Or are we talking about we use internet but it's very limited?
Yeah, like a limited use of internet.
Oh yeah,
Like I said,
definitely.
I don't think
If it's limited, I
Mm,
think it's possible.
okay.
I think only use the internet for those things you need to use it for. I think it's
Okay.
definitely possible.
Right.
You won't face any restrictions in your life, and you'll be able to live a normal life. But
Okay.
living a life without internet, without having any of these sort of not gadgets, but any of these sort of tools of, how do you say, communication, I think would make your life very difficult. I think that it would be very hard to function.
Yeah.
There may be people out there who don't have a smartphone, but they will have access to internet.
Mm.
And just because you don't have access to internet on your phone doesn't mean it doesn't bring the same problems as just having it on your laptop or other things.
Okay.
Okay. So it's all about how we actually use the internet, not what we use the internet on.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, not having a smartphone does have the benefits of not wasting as much time.
Yeah.
But you can still fall in the same traps of just being on your laptop and being on a computer or being on a tablet and stuff like that.
Mm.
But living your life without the internet completely, I think that would be very difficult.
Okay. Yeah, I think I agree. Like,
You don't need to agree.
no, I know that I don't need to agree with you, Kasim. But what I'm trying to say is that personally, I don't. Is it possible? Is it not possible? For our age, I'm talking like our age group and our demographic and the kind of people that'll be watching. I don't think really you can live your life with even like limited use of the internet as well. I think you're gonna end up like socially recluse potentially.
When you say limited use, what do you define by that? What do you mean?
Interesting question, actually. What do I mean? Like, one could argue that the internet is only used for the sake of work purposes. Um, that could be classified as limited use, but you do use the internet for non-work purposes as well.
Yeah.
You use it for like personal reasons as well. I'll give a simple example of like maps, for example. You need to go somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think this thing about talking about
It's very
limited
subjective,
use of-
isn't it? It's very
Yeah.
subjective. It's up to a person
Yeah,
to make his own sort of opinion. We can't make the opinion for everybody.
yeah. I also don't think it's that fruitful. To be honest, talking about the use of a limited internet, if that makes sense. There are going to be people and situations and societies and communities where they have limited access to the internet and they get by perfectly fine. We're obviously talking about it in the context of in the West, where we are, and obviously Muslims and young Muslims in particular. I don't know. I don't think it's really possible. I think, and I don't think like there's much fruitful conversation there either as well. I think the more fruitful conversation is around um, whether or not we need a smartphone and whether or not the use of social media. Okay. Now, I'll start with the smartphone because I remember when I was younger, I went through a bit of a phase about this, um, where I basically said, well, I was thinking to myself, and I was going like seriously thinking about it, where I thought to myself, the smartphone is really not adding any benefit to my life. Um, in fact, I think it's wasting more of my life than I'm actually getting benefit from it. Do I really need it? I'm going to get rid of it, and basically, I'm going to go to a brick. And I thought about it for quite a while. I remember I did have a conversation with one of my friends as well, um, where we talked about it, and he was more on the side of no, you'll need it, and I never did take action on this of just getting rid of my smartphone. I have been away like times before where I've not taken my smartphone with me, spending maybe a month away from having my smartphone. It does you a world of good,
Oh, definitely.
definitely, but I don't think like maybe people who are in the older generation might be able to live without their smartphone. I think in our generation, I think it does become difficult. Um, I think going back to some of the reasons that my friend mentioned back then, and I'm recalling from many years back at the moment, which is why I'm struggling a bit. But I remember, like, there are basics that there are certain basic amenities that your smartphone provides to you, which when you don't have them, you realize very quickly that your life becomes very difficult without them. For example, things like your emails. You tend to get like a lot of information through your emails and stuff. The other thing is like the access to information really easily. Um, Information that's beneficial.
Train times.
Yeah.
One example.
Yeah. Maps is another one. Especially when you're traveling in places that you don't know, you just take your phone out and you instantly know where you are or know where you need to go to get to where you need to be.
Just searching for halal food, places to eat in a different city.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that without a smartphone.
Yeah. So I think that's my 2 pence worth. I think I've come to the conclusion now that no, in this day and age, we do need smartphones. And I think there's a really interesting conversation. This is what I see as part of this channel and the reason for this channel, Kasim. There are many people who are going to disagree with us on the points that we're going to make today and points that we've made in previous episodes as well. For example, there are people that are going to say, no, you don't need a smartphone. You can live your life without a smartphone. And I agree on the thing of you don't need it. It's not a fundamental of your life, right? The same thing with social media, and we'll get to that in a second. You don't need it, right? You can live without it. And probably the ideal maybe in terms of your life in and of itself and living as an individual, not part of society, living as one basically. I agree, social media doesn't really have a place in a lifestyle like that. But the whole point of this channel is, and inshallah, the audience of this channel that we're trying to speak to as well, is we're not talking about what's ideal or what's the ideal for one person or one individual, but more what's pragmatic and what's practical in our lives as youngsters and as young adults and as young Muslim adults, living in the West. And there's like it's a nuance and it's a fine balance.
We're still, how do you say, navigating our way in life.
Yeah.
Because the West is always coming out with new stuff for Muslims to adapt with, and to actually take something and scan it. Is this good? Is this bad? Will this benefit me? Will this not benefit me? And we're always navigating. The West is continuously like making progress forward. Sometimes good things, sometimes bad things, and it's all for us on how we deal with it. Like what we're trying to say is that you can't just shut off from the society that you're living in. It won't work.
Yeah. I think that that's exactly what I'm trying to say. You can't become like a social recluse where you want to. I mean, there's a famous saying, isn't there? The lonely sheep is devoured by the wolf, right? And that's essentially what somebody who advocates for no use of smartphone or no use of social media. That's essentially what they're creating. They're creating a social outcast, essentially. at the same time, there you got to have perspective as well. That there's one side of becoming a social recluse by not using social media at all, or not using a smartphone, etc., etc. But on the other side, you have those people who use these things but go on the complete opposite
Yeah.
side, and they end up going into traps, doing things that they aren't meant to be doing. And that's the other aspect of it.
We like even Islam. He just advocates for taking this middle path of being
Mhm.
balanced. It's not being how do you say, an extreme on each side, not being completely left wing or right wing.
Mhm.
It's about being in the middle
Mhm.
and coming to how do you say logical sort of conclusions or logical sort of findings, which will help you in your life.
Mhm.
Because any person, honestly, they say like the left wing or the right wing, just like almost as close as each other.
Mhm.
We take the middle path, or we take something which is very, very moderate in that
Mhm.
sort of sense. And how do you say, we don't, like we just said, we don't shun everything away.
Yeah, yeah.
Otherwise, our life will become difficult to live, and we'll fall into other things which maybe more harmful.
Mhm. So yeah, I think like I've already touched upon that, but like that our view is social media is essentially what we're trying to say is social media has its benefits, it has its negatives. It's up to an individual to make sure that they don't fall into the negatives and to take benefit from the positives.
It's a means to an end.
Yeah.
It's not the end goal.
Yeah.
It's just there to facilitate certain things,
Mhm.
and to social media is there for a reason.
Mhm.
There's a certain purpose for it. Use the good and leave the bad.
Mhm.
We're not saying that entire social media is good. No, it's not. We understand there's negatives, but there are some good things which you can take from and benefit from as well.
Mhm. Okay, so let's talk about that then, Kasim.
Right, go on.
Positives of social media. Kick us off. What do you think is give us a positive of your use of social media, or what you see is beneficial from social media?
Social media is very, very vast. It depends on what apps you have, what
Mhm.
sort of networks you're on.
Mhm.
And a person, he can individualize anything he wants now. On YouTube, for example, he can follow whomever he wants. He can get certain subscriptions, and he can watch what he wants. On his feed, he will already have certain sort of content coming on, which feeds to his sort of liking.
Mhm.
Now, us guys, we can honestly take a lot of benefit even from YouTube. There's so many things that we can learn about
Mhm.
that has been there and that are helpful resources. Uh, so that's one thing I do, is like personalize whatever you use.
Mhm.
Personally, I don't have certain app because I don't see any benefit inside them, but other people
Mhm.
may do,
Mhm.
and it's subjective to a different person, every single person.
Mhm. Yeah, I think like obviously the obvious thing to mention here is social media is only beneficial in the drips and drabs that you're using,
Yeah.
not as like your be all and end all,
No.
and that's all you do all day. And there's definitely, like you said, there's benefit from it in terms of you've mentioned about content consuming of content, which is of benefit, and there are many people who have created content which is of benefit. Like there are scholars out there that are producing some amazing content, for people like us that we can take benefit from. There's people who have basically done entire playlists on classical works, classical books, whether that be in the in the Arabic language or whether that be in English. There are lectures there that we can take benefit from. There are durus and classes that take place online as well that are hugely beneficial. Um, and social media has this massive benefit of reaching people who otherwise would potentially seem unreachable. Because I think sometimes we forget this, that whilst me and you, Kasim, we live in a community in which there are Muslims all around us, not every Muslim around the world and not every Muslim in the West benefits from those types of sites. Like, for example, we have masjids, plural, masajid, masajid, um, that are around the corner. Yeah, right? We can literally take the pick of which masjid we want to go pray our Maghrib Salah or our Isha Salah, whatever Salah it may be. Okay. But there are many Muslims that live in the West that unfortunately don't have that benefit. They aren't within reach of the masjid. They aren't within reach of people who can teach them about Islam. So unfortunately, their only way of gaining access to Islam is through social media. In which case, social media has provided a tool through which these scholars can reach such people, and that's a massive benefit that you have the potential to have a great reach out there, and inshallah be of benefit to many people. um, The other benefit that I see of like social media is you can join and you can promote causes which you may otherwise be unaware of within your own societies. Within your own community, you might not be aware of certain things that are happening around the world, and you can join within that cause. Like recently, I found out, um, I think within Lebanon, there's been a recent spike in terms of like prices of goods, of amenities. When I'm talking a spike, I'm talking like in the hundreds of percent spike. Like things have just got ridiculous, right? You want to go buy some bread and is now what you used to pay for it, you're now paying almost 1,000% more, right? I would have had no idea about this if it wasn't for social media, and also I wouldn't have been able to provide my own assistance were it not for social media. Okay. The other thing is like um, we now have access to alternative media. Um, whilst we have the mainstream media and the mainstream news, we all know that there is some sort of filtration that goes on within the mainstream news. They filter out what story they want to put out there and what side of the story they want to tell. And unfortunately, at the moment, we are the people who have benefited negatively from that because the Muslim perspective is not within the mainstream news, whereas social media allows us Muslims or our Muslim causes to be promoted within our own communities by our own people, and that's a massive benefit. That we get to see this. Otherwise, were it not for social media, we would become unaware.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
It allows you, in a sense, not like in its entirety, but to become like a sort of international citizen,
hmm,
in where you know what's going on in other parts of the world, in where you understand where there are struggles, where there are changes taking place, which maybe 10, 15 years ago you didn't know.
mhm,
Like just before Ramadan, the Palestinian issue, because of the use of social media, activists, people recording, people taking videos, the Muslims around the West or even in the world got to know that okay, this was happening in Masjid al-Aqsa.
mhm,
This is the footage. This is the evidence.
mhm,
Before you didn't have that. And sometimes, like I was saying to one of my friends, is that sometimes a video it brings more reality to your life than some like maybe a writing will ever do. Sometimes you see a video and it really changes you, or really affects you. This is the effect that social media will have and
mhm.
does have and has had on
Yeah,
people.
yeah, 100%. I think the other sort of benefit is like for businesses and enterprises as well, where like classical methods of advertisement were used. Social media has now provided a platform in which essentially like free
Anybody,
marketing.
anybody can do it now.
Yeah, anybody can do it
You
now.
don't need to have money
Um,
or resources.
yeah, if you have a business idea and you start up, you have the potential of reaching your business out far and wide, um, freely. And the more people that you obviously get on the bandwagon, the more sort of snowballing that you're going to have, which is fantastic because now you've got people who are starting things from their own homes, um, and coming out with fantastic ideas to benefit the people at large and Muslims as well, which is fantastic.
Alhamdulillah, it's good that what people can actually make their livelihood off the internet.
Hmm.
With the skill that they have, which may not have been appreciated maybe 10, 15 years ago,
Yeah.
because they didn't have the resources of having a shop or paying rent and bills and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Now they can just do it from their own home, and you know what? They can do what they want.
Yeah.
And one other thing I want to say is that there's so many good communities online.
Mm.
There are so many people out there who are creating like positive communities. Now, one of our friends, I won't mention his name, he's actually doing like a 75-day challenge
Hmm.
in where there's this community of young boys who they have this like sort of mentor, and he tells them that every single day you have to do one indoor exercise, one outdoor exercise.
Hmm.
You've got to read 10 pages from a non-fictional book every single day. You've got to eat clean, meaning that you can't eat any junk food. You've got to prepare all your meals. You've got to think. What's the other thing? And yeah, you've got to drink. He said, 2 gallons of water every single day.
Hmm.
But he's part of this community now, and he's going through this challenge, and he's saying that I'm finding it difficult, but you know what? Because there's a community there, it's becoming easier because people are going through the same difficulties.
Mm.
And there are so many good things out there.
Yeah.
There are people that you can get for counseling that maybe you don't have access to in your own area.
Hmm.
Even like somebody just to talk to or just to make friends and pen pals. There's so much stuff out there that you can benefit from.
Yeah. I think going back to the thing about advertising as well, one thing you're talking about from the business perspective of the entrepreneur themselves. On the flip side, as a consumer, you now have access to so much as well.
Oh yeah.
I remember like my brother asked me, I think it was just yesterday, he was he started this course, but he was asking me, how do you find out about like so many of these X, Y, and Z different courses? And one of the things, obviously, you build like a network, your own personal network, but at the same time, social media is a big benefit in this as well. Like you can find out about so much courses and content that are being created by our ulama and asatidha that are producing fantastic stuff. And some of them are being produced free for us, just to take benefit from. Um, and through the use of social media, these things have been pushed out, and we've gained access to them. Where normally, if we didn't live within their community, we wouldn't gain access to them. Um, I don't know. Is there any other positives that you want to mention, or shall we move on to the negatives?
I don't know, let's move on.
Okay. I think before we sort of get into the negatives, I think it's very important that we sort of had this understanding that all of these social media apps, be it Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, whatever they may be, there's a whole load of them. They're out there to make money. And there's an interesting conversation to be had about if you don't pay for something, understand that you yourself are what's being sold. Okay. And it goes back to this thing, I mean, a couple of years back, I'm sure you remember about Cambridge Analytica and when they got busted about selling data and stuff. But whilst we are consuming these social media apps, because we're not paying for them, really important that you realize that it's very possible, highly likely, most probable, that we are the products, and we are what's being sold. And it's really, really important to understand that these platforms, they are all businesses, and they're all being made to keep us hooked. The owner of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, doesn't think to himself, "Oh, do you know what? I just want my Facebook users to use Facebook for 5, 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, and that's it." No, he's out there to get you to use Facebook for as long as is possible. Companies that make smartphones, their whole thing is that they want you to buy their phone, and then a couple of years down the line, or even a year down the line, they want you to buy the next one, and then the next one, and the next one, right? Look at Apple, for example, right? They've just released the iPhone 13. Okay, if I was to show you a picture of the iPhone 13, Kasim, and I was to show you a picture of the iPhone 12, I'm sure you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Okay, because they're basically on the exterior they've been made like for like. Okay, basically, but the whole point is that they are trying to sell something to us, or we ourselves are a product, and it's really important to sort of get our head around that, and to protect ourselves as best as we can. This is where we have to think about what we're putting out there, and essentially what in our life should stay private remains private, and what we are happy to sort of allow to become part of the public, we let that out into the public. Does that make sense?
Well, definitely.
And I think like this is really important. Shelter your life, which doesn't deserve or doesn't need to be within the public image. I'll give a classic example. I've that I've just become a parent, and whilst I've mentioned on this podcast that I'm a dad, you will not find a picture of my son that's out there. Because that's not something that I wish to share. Firstly, I don't think that I should be sharing pictures of my son. Okay, but it doesn't need to be. People don't need to see. Those people who have love for him and who want to be around him, feel free to come to my house. I'm not going to turn you down. Okay. But the rest of the people, they don't need to know him. They don't need to see him. And I do think that he needs to be sheltered from that. Okay. The other thing is like, even like my relationship with my wife, I don't need to publicize that. These things don't need, in my eyes, these things don't need to be public. Okay. Yes, social media has its uses, but the way I see it is it also has its boundaries as well. And there are certain things that I don't cross. I'm not willing to show that. And I'm well aware that other people's limits are going to be different. Where people draw boundaries is going to be different. Okay. And I guess this is where potentially some people are going to disagree with us, and that's fine if you disagree with us. At the end of the day, these are what our opinions are. If you draw the boundaries elsewhere, let us know what your boundaries are and why that may be. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Kasim? Public and private.
It's if a person is really happy in his private life, he doesn't need to display it to everybody. That's what I believe anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of people that you do see online who do display everything about their life are usually quite, I would say, empty. Why? Because if you have like something which is special in your life, why would you be on your phone at that time? If you were in a special moment, if you were in a special place, like for me personally, you would be taken in that sort of moment. You wouldn't be on your phone showing to everybody else. And why would you need to show it to everybody else? When a person's happy, he doesn't need to shout from the rooftop that he's happy. He's happy. He feels it. He knows it. Doesn't need to tell everybody else. And like you said, these boundaries, like, let's say I'm not married, okay? And but I just don't understand like these men who like there's sort of thing now on social media where they have like these couples and they just like do everything together and they just have these pranks and jokes and stuff, and I just like I don't understand, like there's some Muslims out there, and how can you display your wife in front of the entire world? Something that I don't understand. How can you display your kids, your personal life? It doesn't need to be out there. You know, we use social media. We're making this podcast, but this is like information that we think is beneficial, but we don't share everything about our lives, those things which are personal to us. You know, keep them to yourself, because not everybody looking has got the best sort of intentions for you or wants good for you. You know, it's
I think so the next sort of negative that I want to talk about is like being addicted to notifications and stuff. And I just found this out earlier today actually. That even the chime of your notification, Kasim, is made in a way to bring you to your phone.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right? That's mad. When I heard that, I just thought that's just crazy to think about. That even to an extent that companies invest in making the chime or the tone in such a way that of a notification that it immediately draws you in. And this is a thing that as soon as we hear our phone go off, it immediately snaps our attention away from whatever we're doing. Okay. And I just want to give like a little short anecdote. I remember I was in a biology exam, must have been like year 10, year 11. You'll remember the old high school sports hall, right?
Yeah.
I remember I was in there, I must have been in like the second or third column, and I had my phone in my pocket. Still remember to this day which phone it was, right? And obviously, no phones are allowed in your pocket or anything. And I must have forgotten to put that phone on silent. And what it was at that time, for some reason, I don't know why, you could have a setting of if you get like a text message, then the notification goes off. But if you don't open the message, then every 2 minutes you'll get like a little buzz. So I remember like at the point I got a text message, and bang on at that point, the deputy head was like walking past me. And obviously I can hear the buzz in my pocket. And he's walked past me, obviously he's not heard a thing. But can you imagine what my heart was like? I'm fairly sure I was like 15 minutes into this exam, yeah? And every 2 minutes after that is buzzing, 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 buzzing. Yeah, so I'm just thinking, what the heck, man? What's going on? And at that point, you don't know whether it's just one message or it's like multiple messages that are coming through or what.
You think somebody died?
Yeah, right. But even then, like my heart's in my mouth because I'm thinking, if my deputy head realized I've got a phone in my pocket, I'm disqualified from this exam. And it was like the proper exam. Anyway, I got out from the exam hall. I checked my phone, and guess who the message is from?
O2.
But yeah, man. Can you imagine where my concentration was?
Yeah.
Though? Okay. And obviously, this is like an extreme anecdote at the end of the day. But even then, like we all know, we're doing something, our concentration, our focus is on one thing. And all of a sudden, we hear our phone buzz from one side of the room, in our pocket, from elsewhere. And immediately, like our attention is gone. You know, our attention is there. Because that's the way that we're wiring our brains at the moment. We're spending so much time on these apps that it's consuming us. It's changing the way that we are to an effect where there's even something that's been found out. It's called the the phantom vibration syndrome, Kasim. Okay, I'm fairly sure there's people that have experienced this. I think I'm one of them, if I admit that I've experienced this as well. That we're so used to our phone buzzing or our phone making some sort of noise that every now and again we feel as if a notification has come through, or like we have got a buzz. So we'll take out our phone and check it, and there'll be nothing there. But can you imagine like how engrossed are we inside of our tech that our brains are now perceiving something when it's not really there? That's crazy to think, right? And that only occurs because we've spent so much time behind them. Okay. I don't know.
It was funny because I went to a lecture and there was this doctor giving a talk about addictions. He first started off with drugs and alcohol, and then moved on to social media.
Mm.
And he just mentioned this point that we now have like a less of an attention span than a goldfish.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes every 8 to 10 seconds. Like he goes like most people now can't hold their concentration for sustained periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
That's because of the use of social media and the use of their phones.
Mm.
And it's this thing, this culture of when people put things on the internet of getting the dopamine effect from likes and reactions and
Mhm.
shares and subscribes and stuff like that. And this has in turn affected people's minds and moods. People are depressed or happy depending on their social media.
Mhm.
And I think like if you're that involved with your social media, I think that's a dangerous place to be.
Okay.
And you need to change something about it because it will end up ruining your life.
Yeah. So I think that leads on perfectly to the next point then, Kasim. Doing things for the gram. As I say, doing things for the gram, right? As the saying goes, that
We do things for the tube.
what do you make of that concept? No, actually, as for YouTube, I think I need to turn these lights on. But yeah, what do you think about that concept? That people are doing things only for the sake of getting that picture or getting that clip or whatever it may be to show the world. Okay, what do you think?
Yeah, it's let's be honest. Look at YouTube. Look at Instagram. The biggest pages which I follow today, the biggest sort of like people. The best channels are all these pranks and all this stuff, which is quite ridiculous, which is actually bringing no benefit to your life. Let's be honest. You see a prank on somebody, which most of the time are staged, they're not bringing any benefit to your life, and they're just people doing crazy, stupid stuff just for reactions and just for likes and stuff. And in a sad way, it's sad that our society's gone down that path where they don't consume those things which are actually beneficial for them. Not being boring, but it's like what sort of benefit is this bringing to your life? The fact that you see somebody doing something crazy, it's
Yeah.
And we just live in this generation now where some channels out there, the big channels are getting paid and they made their life out of this, but now you've got like normal kids who are just reenacting this and for no likes, for no reason, just because they've been influenced by it.
Yeah, I think like it's almost like become pop culture, isn't it? Just doing things just for the sake of likes and stuff. And I know it's had such like toxic effects to an extent where even like Instagram itself has now created a function where you can hide the number of likes that are on your particular picture. I think it's a good concept to at least limit the harms, because people are just putting stuff out there just for the sake of appreciation, or because they feel inadequate about themselves.
These insecurities that people
Yeah,
have.
and this is the thing, like social media is never going to solve that problem. If you are insecure about who you are as a person or your appearances, or you have insecurities or whatever you are doing for the sake of people liking it, is never ever ever going to cure that insecurity. It's never going to solve that issue. At the end of the day, if you are insecure about yourself and you feel inadequate, I think this is like part of your life journey. I've had times in my life, if I'm honest, where I felt inadequate, or I've felt insecure about maybe the way I look or the person who I am. Okay, but that is only overcome by self-reflection and about doing something about it. Okay, some things are out of your control completely. Okay, for example, like your appearance. For us normal day-to-day people, we're not going to go out there and be able to afford to get cosmetic surgery or whatever it may be. Okay,
I wouldn't want it, to be honest.
Yeah, but
look at them in 10 years.
But what I'm trying to say is, like, these things, you have to get over it. If you're insecure about the way that you look, you do what you can to a certain extent, and I completely understand about wanting to look nice. Okay, and I completely understand if somebody says, I want to look the best version of myself. It may be in terms of your dress style and you dress nicely. It might be that you have your hair in a certain way, or whatever that you may do for the sake of trying to help you look better. I understand that, and I'm a big believer of that as well, because you also need that self confidence as well. What I'm not a fan of is putting yourself out there and showing yourself for the sake of curing these insecurities by other people liking what you show. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's a very, very subtle difference. Like I mentioned, there are certain insecurities that you have about yourself that are not solvable.
No.
Okay, you have to learn to sort of battle through them and get through them. There are other insecurities which are basically, they are part of you. That is who you are, and you have to learn to love yourself. And there are other insecurities in which they are genuine problems, and you need to take some action. For example, I could turn around and say I'm insecure about the knowledge that I hold. I don't feel that I'm knowledgeable enough. No matter what anybody says to me, that's not going to cure it. Even if the most knowledgeable person sat next to me and said, you know what, put his hand on my shoulder and said, Yasin, no, you're a knowledgeable person. That's never going to solve that insecurity for me. What will solve that insecurity for me is if I continue in my journey of learning, and I continue to tune myself up, and eventually I'll come to a point where I'll have confidence. And there's a difference between confidence and arrogance here as well. I think I've just gone on a massive tangent here, but inshallah, there's benefit in this as well. But yeah, I think like this inadequacy or this insecurity is just being amplified more and more by social media. And where people are looking for answers, they're not going to get answers there. And the quicker that we learn that, the better, inshallah.
It's this thing of comparison.
Yeah.
It's ultimately comparison yourself to other people. And most ideals you have in front of you, especially on social media, are fake. Just talking about from a boy's perspective is when you see a lot of gym guys. Most of the guys on YouTube are not natural. They all claim to be natural, but they're not. And they're selling you a product, or they're selling you a sort of image and lifestyle which is fake. And they seem to that you can reach this sort of level or this sort of physique naturally, and when it's impossible to do so. And most people have fallen for that unfortunately. They can't see be further than that. What somebody telling you doesn't mean it's the entire truth.
Yeah. What do you think about people like posting their food and stuff online, Kasim?
I should not swear, but no, that's all my reaction. No, it annoys me. It just annoys me. I don't need to see what you're eating, mate. Like most of the time, it probably looks good, it probably doesn't taste good. You probably pay big bucks for it as well. Let's be honest. No, I'm sorry. It just annoys me, man. Like if I go out with guys and they're taking pieces, it just annoys me, man. It's like, come on, man. Just we're here for a reason, One thing I learned. This is what happens when you interact with different people. I was reading a book with one of my teachers, and we just reading like just a normal book, and he was talking about how the rich people in other countries eat, and he mentioned something which was very profound. It was very simple. He didn't think anything of it, but I took it very personally and deep. He goes, here in Egypt, only the rich people get to eat meat, because we don't get to eat meat. And I was just thinking, oh, wow, man. And even me, I think if you post your food all the time on social media, like have some consideration to people who don't have that stuff, and they're looking at it and they're thinking, oh, wow, what if we could, But it just from another perspective, it just annoys me, man. Just I want to eat.
Yeah.
I don't want. Forget your picture. I don't care.
I've had it times where I've been out with people and I want to get my plate of food has arrived and I want to eat, and the person would be like, no, sorry, I want to take a picture. But I'm hungry, man. I want to eat. Please, can you just let me eat my food? And like stopping people from eating their food because you want to get a picture to show everybody. And
honestly,
I don't see the point. If somebody here can give me a reason as to why they post pictures of their food or videos of the food or whatever it may be before they eat, I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear a perspective as to why you think that is a good thing to do that. I knew one person, right? I'm not gonna hint who or anything, but literally every time they were eating, the phone was out and a video or whatever it was, to an extent we were doing iftar together as well, and they're getting their phone out to record their iftari as well. Bro, I've just fasted for 18 hours, man. I want to eat my food. I don't want you to record my food.
No, it's I don't understand why that thought comes to people's mind of taking it's a disease, man. It's it friggin' annoys me, man.
Yeah. I guess the other sort of negative of social media is, unfortunately, people are given a voice who really shouldn't be given a voice. And
are you looking at us?
Yeah. I think to be I'm well aware that we are potentially within that group as well. Okay. And the sort of response I'll give to it is that sometimes, especially within this day and age, you have youngsters who, unfortunately, they can't they can't take advice from somebody that doesn't understand their lifestyle and their perspective and the way that they've grown up. Okay. And because of that, I think people like myself and yourself, Kasim, people will take advice from us who are in our age group or maybe slightly younger than us or slightly older than us because they see that we've been through something similar. Okay. And I think that's where maybe there's a very small slither of a platform that should be given to people like us. I repeat, it's a small slither. Okay. Um, which is why I think, like, inshallah, hopefully, what we are doing now and what we have been doing is of some benefit to people. But like I said, completely agree that there are people who are given a platform that really shouldn't be. Okay.
I think it's for every individual just to stay in their lane.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, on this podcast, we're not going to discuss those things which we don't have any experience in.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not here to give you answers, or we're not here to give you certain decisions. These are just things we're bringing up. We're trying to stay in our lane. And if you ever do get out of that and we do see something which is wrong, then we do accept the criticism.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the journey. It's part of learning. It's part of growing. That's part of being sincere.
Mm-hmm.
And those on social media, you don't have that person. He makes a few videos and wants to become a celebrity, and he wants to think whatever he says is correct. And we don't have that sort of attitude. I hope we don't anyway.
Yeah.
And if you do say something wrong, we will accept the criticism. We said that before as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think, like, we've discussed quite a lot of positives and negatives. I'm well aware of how long this episode is going on for now as well. So I've sort of like skipped through some of the other negatives that we've mentioned within our notes. I think, to be honest, talking about this, Kasim, right? I think it'll be a really good episode in the future at some point where basically we'd go through like previous episodes and maybe add to each episode a bit, and we might turn around and say, okay, we'll spend 10 minutes talking about something that we didn't talk about in XYZ episode and make it like as an extra cut, so to speak, tangent. But yeah, anyway, some hints and tips then, Kasim, some advices for especially our generation, the generation that's probably slightly above us, and the younger generation, Muslims in particular, about how to use social media, what to restrict ourselves to. What do you?
This is just personal opinion, personal advice. I use YouTube, Instagram. I have Facebook, but I don't really use it. It's just if anyone needs to get in contact with me, it's quite useful for that. Yeah, the reason I use Instagram is just to promote the podcast. I don't post on there anything. I don't go on my explore page. YouTube, I use it for a lot of things, learning a lot of stuff, a lot of free courses online, brilliant resources. YouTube, you can personalize that. You can follow who you want, subscribe to who you want. You can get a playlist down. I think it's amazing too. Instagram just for promotion. If I was to have a business as well, I would use Instagram. But again, limit your use. Take the benefit what you need to. Don't spend too much time on it. If it's having a negative effect on your life, you need to leave it. That's why personally I just don't use TikTok. I don't use Snapchat as well. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think I'm in a similar sort of boat in terms of like what apps we use and what apps we don't use, because I think our sort of concept on what's beneficial and what isn't is very similar in that sense. I think rather than mentioning like what I use and what I don't use, maybe some other tips that I've sort of learned along the way. I think it's really important to have periods where like you completely detox and you completely like sideline your phone or sideline social media, and you're not using it at all. Where you might put your phone to one side. You spend maybe 6 hours, half a day or a day, just not touching your phone, and there will be an urge to go to it, but you've got to like just turn around and say, no, I'm not going there. I was listening to actually a podcast in which somebody who's a tech reviewer, very, very big, he's got almost 10 million subscribers, right? And I was listening to to a podcast that he was involved in, and he was mentioning this, where he's involved in tech so much, right? Revolving phones, revolving different gadgets and things like that. But he has this where he completely detoxes, doesn't go anywhere near his phone. The urge is there to go, but he spends time away from it. Another thing will be like disabling notifications. So like I turn off my WhatsApp notifications, which is why on my WhatsApp status it says, if you need me, ring me, right? Because I don't have my notifications turned on. Sometimes some people like will ask me, they'll send me a message, I'll reply like 7 hours later. I didn't have my notifications turned on, so I didn't know your message. If it was urgent, ring me. There are other applications that exist as well, paid for applications, where basically you can shut down all your notifications to a phone, or you can set a timer of how long you use a particular app for. So let's say, for example, you set yourself 1 hour of all your social media per day. Once you've used up that 1 hour in that day, there's a lock on that app now. you can't open that app until midnight again, which is really beneficial.
Yep.
Definitely keeping an eye out on your like your screen on time and screen usage time. You know, really really helpful. Just day to day, just knowing how long you spent on your phone. And also there are like well-being apps that can help us as well. Just keep our sanity. At the end of the day, like social media has its benefits, it has its negatives as well, and its negatives are quite severe in terms of like our mental health and even in terms of like our physical health as well. Like there are people who have like conditions in their neck and stuff because they're constantly looking down at their phone, or they have problems with their eyes where they struggle to focus in real life now because they spent so much time with their phone so close to them. I sort of tried to like wrap up everything quite quickly because I'm aware of like how long this episode's gone on. But is there anything else that you sort of want to end on?
I think we just leave it at that, inshallah.
Okay. Jazakallahu khair for listening to this episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts on social media and stuff. Like I said, I think this is a contested topic, Kasim. Everybody's going to have their own views on it.
Yeah.
Completely appreciate that. If you differ from our views, I'd love to hear what your views are about some of these things. I know that we've been quite strong in terms of our views because that's what they are at the end of the day, you know. If you have any other thoughts that you'd like to share, feel free to share them below. If you agree with what we said, we'd love to hear, inshallah. We'd love to hear, do you agree with us? And, you know, we're not just talking complete nonsense that's not applicable to anybody around the world, inshallah. So, Jazakallah for listening. As always, like, share, and subscribe to the video. Share with your friends and family. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.